Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Give me 1 second to convert. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yes.
It's the agenda for today. And this was posted last week, I want to say, but this is what we'll go over today. First thing I'm going to do is go through attendance real quick. So I'm going to stop sharing and look at my roll call. And just say here when I call your name, nothing special. So Howard Evergreen. I got you. Emily Cohn Miller, I did not see her. So absent.
Unmute. There we go.
James Bryant.
Here.
Cam Spalding, I see you.
Yeah.
Tania Dowell, I did not see you. Helen Kimball here.
Yeah.
Matthew Gillikin. Here, but frozen maybe. Nancy Carpenter.
Here.
And Olivia Gabby. Not here. Okay. So next thing, just for our viewers at home, I wanted to briefly touch upon what CDBG CV is, since this is a new type of funding. So we have the CDBG dollars that we get every year, since we are an entitlement community. CDBG CV is special because of the coronavirus. So CDBG dollars are given to Charlottesville every year to help local governments develop viable urban communities. Now with the coronavirus, the main goal of CDBG CV is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. So HUD wants all the CDBG CV funds to go towards funding activities that will respond towards infectious disease response. Does that make sense? So any coronavirus disease response related activities, that's what those activities or the monies should be funding. So the city was awarded $246,699, and this was broken up into 3 funding umbrellas. So public service, economic development, and administrative and planning. Applicants were able to apply for public service and economic development, those 2 umbrellas. The administrative and planning umbrella, that goes towards city costs. So all the environmental reviews, Davis-Bacon, Section 3 federal related requirements, those are stuff that the city has to pay for under the CDBG CV umbrella. So that umbrella got $49,339.80. That's already allocated. The other 2 umbrellas, public service and economic development, both equally got $98,679.60 each. Last week on June 11th, the Economic Development Strategic Action Team Task Force met, and they discussed on the 1 application that the city received for the economic development umbrella. And they decided to award all $98,679.60 to that applicant. So the full econ umbrella has now been awarded. So today we're here to talk about the public service umbrella. In total, I met with 11 applicants as we were going through the 2-week application process, and 6 applications came through. 1 application was late, and 5 applications were on time. And today we're here to talk about the 5 applications that were on time. So you guys sent me your scores, and I'm going to share with you those scores today. So let me share my screen again. Okay, can you see the spreadsheet? And I did email the task force the spreadsheet too. So if you do want to pull this up on your own end and kind of make the font bigger or larger on your side of things, feel free to do that. I did kind of blow it up on my side of things here. But this is what we're working with. The averages are in the yellow orange box on the right-hand side here as you scroll down. And the econ applications all the way on the below screen here, so you don't have to worry about that. But the remaining applications are here. So if you guys look, the top score was Thomas Jefferson Health District. The second highest was Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless. The third highest was Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority. And then the fourth was Office of Economic Development. And now I'll open it up to you guys as to how we want to proceed with funding awards.
So Erin, I note that when we have your screen share, we can't see attendees or raised hands. Those boxes disappear from my view. Can you unscreen share or how will we know people want to speak?
I can see it.
Public comment will be held at the end, towards the end of the meeting, but let me stop sharing real quick.
Okay. That's just if anybody uses the raise hand, right, as a panelist. They don't have
I should have said that earlier. We'll hold a public comment towards the end of the meeting for anyone who does want to say anything.
Okay.
We'll have that at the end. Okay, let me reshare.
Erin, I have a question.
Yes.
Could you comment a little bit on your scoring of the organizational capacity of each of these groups and how this unique situation may or may not align well with their past capacities?
Okay, so the staff organizational capacity, that score, if you do look into the formula here, it's not been included in anyone's grand total here. Let me get out of that. What I look at is past audits, how they process invoices and send the invoices into the city. The quarterly reports, how they are able to submit those or whether they submit them properly, whether they follow HUD paperwork correctly, and keeping an open, and whether they're able to keep an open line of communication with the city. With the COVID funding, all jurisdictions were a little bit more lenient as far as the staff organizational capacity score, depending on how other jurisdictions scored their applicants. Some jurisdictions we were told to be more lenient this time around. But that being said, we are required to still file and follow HUD procedures. and their paperwork rules. So if there's an applicant who has a track record with not following HUD paperwork and HUD knows that, we are still required to give them an appropriate score. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. And then could you explain particularly why CRHA got a 0?
So this applicant, and I think I wrote a little bit why on the staff sheet. This applicant had to repay the city multiple times back to, not multiple times, but a couple times back their home and CDBG funding back to HUD just because of inability to spend down the funds in a timely manner. I did mention this in their meeting, their technical assistance meeting, to address this in the application while they were filling it out, and I did not see that it was addressed in the application. I did also send them their last audit report. And again, they did not address anything from their last audit report in the application itself. So that's why they received the score that they did.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
When I looked at the CDBG CV money and listening in on the weekly National Low Income Housing Coalition phone calls throughout April and May, you're right, there was a loosening per se of having the requirements met at a particular time, but the requirements have to be met. But I'm also looking at CDBG is supposed to be for low income folks. And my idea is that this money needs to be on the ground from jump, from basically July 1st. And CRHA has some infrastructure to be able to provide rental assistance because, we know that about 22 to 3% of all renter households in this country, starting with July, really, are going to be at risk of eviction as soon as these moratoriums, if they're not extended, as soon as these moratoriums are over. And so looking at what they want to do, which is to provide housing stability for families who are not in public housing, because they were able to do that for public housing residents a month or so ago. I thought that it was a really important need to get that money out in the community where it could do the most good right now for the next 2 or 3 months, which is what they were talking about, and try and mitigate some of that. Some of that potential for having families and individuals with no place to go still during the, we're still in the early parts of this pandemic. And that they had some problems before, I'm not discounting, I'm not counting on any of that right now. I'm just looking at what they have to offer as far as the folks that they want to offer it to, and can they do it? And you have the CSRAP program now, they're in the 2nd year. So there is some history to draw on as to how they administer that program, the HCV program, and public housing.
Right, and I'm not dismissing that they didn't have a good proposal. My concern is just the administration portion of the CDBG program. Again, my staff score does not get included into the final averaging. I also did ask our housing coordinator to join the call today because he knows more about housing prices than I do. If he wants to talk more about that, he can offer some insight. John, if you're there, do you want to help out?
I am here. Sorry, I'll introduce myself. My name is John Sales, and I'm the housing program coordinator for the city. And I did look at the housing proposals just to give Aaron a little more information, because we are working on some other housing programs to respond to the pandemic. They are going in front of the city council tonight. It's 4 programs. It's a homeless rental assistance program. It's a reentry assistance, reentry housing assistance program, a mortgage assistance program, and a landlord rental assistance program. And all the programs are providing assistance between 3 months and 6 months, depending on which program it is. So I looked at the CRHA proposed program compared to the program that's going in front of the City Council tonight for approval. And the funding amounts are vastly different, but the assistance requested, the amount of individuals to assist are fairly close. So I had some concerns that they wouldn't be able to provide assistance to nearly the amount of people that they think they could provide assistance to, just based upon what we're currently providing based in the SysRap program, due to a lot of the individuals that are in the program losing their employment and funding income. Um, so the rental assistance that we are providing, the gap uh, has increased. So last month, I think we spent about $70,000 last month in rental assistance. When previously, before the pandemic, we were averaging about 20 to 30,000 a month. So it's a relatively big jump. So 70,000 in 1 month, and that was enough assistance for 90 folks. So I didn't think that the number that they asked for was adequate enough to address the amount of individuals they would like to serve. And the program is relatively similar to another program that we're also offering. So I didn't give any negative reviews to it. I just had a little bit of concerns about the amount of assistance that it would need to provide or accomplish its goals.
Thanks, John.
No problem.
Well, doesn't it also, I mean, all these rental assistance programs that will be forthcoming, they all have certain lenses. You know, I have a certain lens for the money I administer. I'd like to connect with all these folks that are going to be having rental assistance. I think we all need to be talking across the board so that we can use targeted strategies to make sure we are targeting the subpopulations within our rental individuals and families to make sure that we can reach, as a community, that we can reach as many as possible. And, you know, to that end, I also think it requires some landlord negotiation as well. I mean, I know you got a mitigation fund coming up for landlords that are suffering because of lack of tenant payment. But I think that, you know, that CRHA should be a part of the mix. I think they're, you know, ready to go. They're ready to put money out. We don't have to wait for people to be, you know, ready to go. That, you know, they could certainly target a certain subpopulation and be able to, I think, adequately address that, talk to the landlords to find out what might be, you know, it could be less, because I find that when I negotiate with landlords, sometimes I can get them to accept a little less right now, you know, because we are in the middle of this new paradigm and we don't know what we're going to look like, you know, when we come out on the other end. So, you know, there may be some ability to do some risk abatement for them, but also be able to maybe, you know, if this program is one that we feel is a recommendation we want to make, could certainly impact a certain targeted population that would relieve the pressure on other funds that are going to be targeting certain populations.
I have a question. So the CRHA say that they want to provide rental assistance to 50 families. Would it, are they required, would they be, I mean, would it be possible for them to basically provide, if you're saying, John, that $70,000 wouldn't be enough money to cover 50 families for 3 months, if they were to use 70,000, or if we gave them a partial amount, could that just be used as a partial assistance towards their rental needs, and other city funds could be used to supplement that?
I think that's something that could happen, but I think it's very important that we're like being as direct, and we're not like overestimating how many people we can assist, because it negatively affects our numbers when we're reporting to HUD. If we say we're going to do 50 families, but we only end up doing 10 families, it negatively affects us. So if that is the case, that's something we need to talk about, and see what funding sources could be partnered together. Because if you do the 70,000 divided by 50 divided by, I think it's 3 months worth of assistance, Aaron.
Yes, they
That
said
you
3
were
months.
proposing? So that's like $466 a month. Um, and I don't know any places in Charlottesville that was renting that cheap. Um, so that certainly could be the case. But I think we have to be really realistic and look at all the funding sources that could be attached together to do that. And that should be something that's talked about before anything is awarded, just so we know we have the funding secured. So it's not an issue in the back end where we are not able to spend it, or we're able to spend it, but we aren't accomplishing our goals that we've outlined to HUD.
So thank you. That's really helpful. So at this point, let's suppose whether we gave, I'm just saying hypothetically, just so I can understand how this would work out. If we gave CRHA 70,000, or if we gave them 35,000, is it possible to kind of reverse engineer the idea of how many families they would be able to serve based on, we pick a dollar amount and then determine how many families actually could be reasonably expected to be served by that dollar amount? Or at this point, are they locked into like they have to serve 50 families, or like a prorated amount of that if we were to cut it to a smaller amount?
So in their application, since they did say 50, I have to input 50 into the HUD IDIS system, and that's what we have to go with. We could also reverse engineer it and see, what that 35,000 would look like in a sense of the number of families. But logistically, the 50 families is what I have to go with.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Mhm.
John, did you have any thoughts on the TJack application and how that fits in with other initiatives that the city has?
I will say all the applications were really good. And I think all of them like are all of them are needed. The TJack one, it's definitely a need. As you see, I believe they are no longer occupying the Key Center. So it is a need out there, and I spoke with Anthony Harrell last week. We were talking about the high cost of the hotel rooms that they're currently using and contracted for to house some of the homeless. So I know the funding is needed there. There are other funding sources that are also coming online. Um, there's no guarantee on the funding amount or the restrictions that will be placed around the funding, but there are some other funding sources that are coming online. Um, but I will say the funding that is even proposed in this is not going to address all of the need um, for the city. And the funding that I'm proposing tonight is not going to address all of the need. Um, but I hope that we can address a big chunk of it and just keep biting off chunks, and then we can completely get there. Is my hope. Um, but I hope I answered your question. I really can't point to any of the applications because all the applications are good and all of them are addressing a big need in the community. So you all have a tough job today.
But do you think for TJack, in terms of their numbers, in terms of number of beneficiaries and the amount they're proposing allocating per beneficiary, you think that's realistic?
Yes. Because TJack is looking to partner other funding sources together to accomplish this mission. So it's not solely looking at just the COVID CB money, CBG money. It's looking at some sources. It's private funding it's received, some funding it's received from the state. So it's looking to partner all those funding sources together to accomplish this mission. It's what I got from talking to Anthony and looking at the application. So I
Thank you.
really wasn't too worried about that one.
I have a question, Aaron. Part of the TJack funding is for position. So I was kind of confused as to, at the very end, even with the clarification question, as to how much money was really going into direct service and how much was going into the budget for an extra position. I was a little confused.
I believe they had it in that break. I would need to double check real quick. Hang on 1 second.
Thank you.
Okay, so they originally said that they wanted to do, well, he wanted to ask for $141,000 in assistance, but that's not what's available. So he went with the lower amount. Where'd it go? There we go. So he's using both his CDBG and potentially CDBG CV funds. He just didn't clarify that in the application for the staffing and services for this application. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have to go back to CRHA, there's a portion of their application that has some jargon that would be helpful for me to have explained by someone. On it's in the section where they kind of explain, it's their strategy section. They say, and I'm asking this because I'm trying to understand how their funds would be distributed out and how much flexibility they'd have. And it says that the Ewrap shall be provided monthly as the applicant qualifies, not to exceed 3 months. The monthly housing assistance payment shall be equal to the applicable HGVP payment standard for bedroom size for the Charlottesville area as established annually by the Virginia Housing Development Authority minus the tenant's portion of the rent. I guess it'd be helpful for me to understand what exactly that would mean practically for an individual family and how much money that would mean would need to be dispersed and how much flexibility CRHA would have and how much they would disperse each month for a family.
Are you looking at page 5 of the application?
It's under this number 12, the strategies. I've got it in a long PDF, so I'm not sure which.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so if you're looking at the CRHA application, it's page 5 of that individual application. On the bottom.
Yeah.
Aaron, you want me to answer that one?
Yeah, could you? I am blanking on Ewrap.
Every year there are HUD determines the area market rate, what HUD is willing to pay for a 1-bedroom, efficiency, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, and then beyond. They establish a payment plan of what that unit should cost in your area based upon a study. It's always off compared to the actual fair market in the area, which is why there's such a lower utilization rate for the vouchers compared to the actual number of vouchers that an organization can put out on the street. So that's the number that's compared to. And so of that, 30% of it, depending on whatever the individual's income, 30% of their income, monthly income, will go towards their rent. And then the gap filler will be what CRHA is paying. So let's say you make $2,000 a month, your rent is $1,200 a month. 30% of the 2,000 will be your portion of the rent, and of that, so minus that from the 1,200, and that will be what the CRHA is filling that gap. So I hope that explains a little bit. So it'll be $600.
I would add that many people will be living in places that'll be paying more than what the fair market rent is. So that amount would not be included and would not be covered if that were the case, because the fair market rent only pays, it's about 60%, actually, 65% of what rents actually are in the area.
Yeah, it's really low.
It's really low. So people will be renting places that will cost more, but the cutoff for paying them will be at that fair market rent line. So many landlords will not get their full rent if that's the case.
But I thought this was rental assistance for those people who may already are already in housing and are unstably housed and at risk of being out on the street because they have lost their income due to pandemic. It's not like new rentals.
No. But these were people who rented on their own.
Yeah.
Where the fair market rent wasn't a factor when they rented. So many of them are probably paying 40, 50% of their income in rent right now. Whereas if you had a Section 8 voucher, they would not let you rent a place where that would be too much money. A lot of these individuals have had to take higher rental levels.
Well, I mean, if you're talking 0% to 50% AMI, most people, I mean, $1,200 to $1,300 on is the most that a lot of people are renting, and that's usually out at Barracks West and some places like that. And you're right, that is, sometimes 50 or 60 or 70% of their income to try and keep themselves and their families housed. Absolutely. But it's certainly for those income levels, I think, are going to be within fair market value as determined by HUD for those numbers of bedrooms. I mean, there may be a few that are stretching it by being, over, but I would say the vast majority that this program is geared to help may not fall into that.
Does that help, Matthew?
That's helpful. And I guess is the worry is that basically for when CRHA goes to assist families under the conditions of this grant to meet the criteria that they've set out as to how much support they would provide in each of those situations, that they would run through all of the funding before they hit the 50 families they say they're going to target. But okay, sorry if we're repeating something we said earlier. I want to
No, it's okay.
a little more of the nuts and bolts of it. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm not seeing
Hey, Aaron,
any.
can you hear me? Is there a
Yes.
plan for CRHA to submit any audit? Because in your notes, it said the last time that they were audited was in 2011. That's been 9 years ago, 8 years ago.
Mhm.
So they have not received an audit in that time at all?
So not for CDBG or home funds, they haven't. They may have for other city funds, but not for this program.
Okay.
They get audited by HUD every year. So they, I mean,
Yes, they do. Okay, so normally what has been done in the past is the higher scoring applicant or the task force tends to give funding awards to the higher scoring. So in this case, Thomas Jefferson Health District and Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless were the two higher scoring applicants. Do you guys prefer to give one applicant the full funding award or to split it up? What's the general consensus?
I'm going to be very honest and just say that even though the health district had a very wonderful, request and application, the fact that it's not creating any housing stability which is what we need most out of this CDBG money, is the one mark I have in its effectiveness. Community health workers are wonderful to have, and they can certainly go out and do a marvelous job. But at the end of the day, it's not going to keep that single mom with 2 kids in her housing when she hasn't worked for 2 months. That's just my, my only comment I want to make on that. And so I wouldn't really necessarily support partial funding, even though they said could do with all the applicants said they could do it. But that's just my opinion, and that's where I'm at. I'm at how can we keep people in housing? How can we keep children? I mean, they've already been subjected to, or even elderly, everybody's been subjected to a lot of trauma over the past 6 months. And how do we mitigate some of that trauma with this money that the federal government gave with whatever restrictions it put on it, and who's got the best idea for it? And community health workers are great, but it just doesn't keep people who are on limited budgets housed. It doesn't keep single moms who have to figure out how they're going to do childcare if and when school starts up and they only go a day here and a day there and then they're home. It doesn't help a lot of those day-to-day issues that those folks who are in the low and extremely low income levels are going to be extremely challenged with, even more so as we go through this pandemic, because it's not going to be over even, by the end of the year. So.
And Aaron, I tend to agree with Nancy in regards to our situation with the lack of housing and the affordability of housing. Is it any way possible that we could look at maybe dividing this up between the 5 applicants
Between, yeah, you can.
so that everybody will get something? Even though we know that the Thomas Jefferson Health District is #1 and #2 for the homeless, would it be possible to perhaps, I mean, I think that's very important, what Nancy's saying, extremely.
Yeah, that's an option as well.
And I'll be
You
honest,
know, we
I mean,
go through this.
Oh.
We go through this every time. Every time that we do this scoring, there's always good projects and there's never enough money.
Exactly.
Never enough. And we ask ourselves, why do we do the scoring if we're not going to follow it? You know, they're all important needs. And clearly when the CDBG funds came out, they included the health needs of the community as equal priority to housing. And maybe we should have had this discussion early on and said we're only going to focus on housing. I don't know. I don't know if we could have even legally have excluded them from the process.
We cannot.
We couldn't. So they're all important needs, and
yes.
I mean, I don't want to keep doing this year after year where we do scoring and then say, but the scores don't matter. It's just we've had this discussion every single year, just so you know, because it's so hard.
Let me go to the screen here. So this was everyone's funding requests. Are you able to see this? I know Zoom can sometimes stop sharing. This was everyone's funding request. So this is what we have to work with, the 98,000.
I'll just make a suggestion. We can, I mean, feel free to take it or leave it, but I would suggest that the OED application, we not fund it all. Our score was significantly lower. I mean, unfortunately, it seems like CRHA's application may have some significant hurdles based on what Aaron and John are saying in terms of being able to fully meet the standards they've set. And so I think we all care about housing. And then also the health district has the best score. So my suggestion would be, I think I agree with Nancy that housing really matters. So to fully fund the health or the TJack's application of 60,000 and then give the remaining 38,000 to the health district.
Oh, did I do that right?
So if I can say, I understand the logic of that. If I remember from reading the proposal, it was 44,000 per community health worker, plus, you know, plus some supervisory fees, I think. So I don't know that they would even be able to pay one community health worker if it was reduced to 38,000. They might be able to do one part-time, I'm not sure.
They have been able to secure a fair amount of major donors. I'd be surprised if, I mean, that maybe we have to split it a little bit and slice a little bit off of TJack's to make that happen. But the health district has had some pretty large donations as well. So I'm guessing they'd be able to come up with that difference. I don't know that for sure, but just a thought. That is a good point though.
Well, Aaron, maybe you could answer just so I awareness if they one of the pluses of the amount that they were willing to pay their community health workers was that it was more of a living wage than we usually see. Is there a way, if they were not funded fully for one based on what they were planning to pay, that they wouldn't be able to reduce the amount that they were paying their community health worker, that they would have to do some kind of matching fund? I mean, I don't know if we can make that kind of requirement on the funding. Is that sort of coming across what my point is? I think Erin might be frozen, actually. I think because she is very
Erin,
deep
come
in
back.
thought. And if anyone else can answer that question.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think we lost her again.
Oh, no, now you're muted. You're muted now.
All right. Can you hear me?
There.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. It's the Wi-Fi. Let me share. There we go. Okay, if it does go out again, I'll come back in. I have my phone data on, so I'm using that right now. You're asking to see if the health department, you were asking to see if they were matching our funds?
No, I was saying, I was
checking to see.
No, what I was pointing out was that I believe in the budget, the cost of the community health workers was 44,000 plus some amount for supervisory. I mean, I guess I could pull this. I made this note somewhere. So they were going to pay them $18 an hour. And then on top of that, they had 20% overhead plus supervisor and payroll time of 12,000. And I guess my concern was if the award were for 38,000, you know, can we make a contingent on them finding the matching funds to make sure that they don't lower the pay rate to make up for that? And I didn't know if that's even something that we can ask.
We're technically not allowed to ask that, but since they do have it in their application, we can follow up with them to see if they are following up with that requirement, but we can't make it a requirement per se. It's just making sure we can follow up to see if they have made that part of their staffing requirements on their end. Does that make sense? But since we're not fully funding,
you're saying we can't make it a contingent upon it, but we can say in the spirit of it, we realize we're awarding less, but our hope and expectation is that the pay rate will not be reduced for your community health worker.
Yeah, we can't set guidelines on pay rate with the CDBG program, but we can hold them accountable to their application and what they've written in it when we do conduct their monitoring and their quarterly reports.
Okay.
So is this the funding recommendation that the task force is sticking with?
I don't agree with it.
Okay.
I think it should be flipped, actually, that the health department should get 2/3 and the TJack get 1/3. Given that they were the highest score, I think we still need to acknowledge that.
Okay.
You might create a new column, Aaron, that has alternative numbers or something if you want.
Are we still on the proposal of 2/3, 1/3? Yeah. Howard makes a point about the rubric and the indexing.
Let me suggest a slight modification, maybe a different version, which would be to fund the health district at 50% so they can fully fund one position, and then give the remaining amount to TJack.
What did he-
50% of their funding request or 50% of the umbrella award?
Their funding request is actually more than the umbrella award.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to double check.
Say 50% of their funding request.
Okay. And then you said the rest goes to TJack, you said?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I think that Matthew made a good compromise between the 2/3, 1/3 to 50% of the request and the remaining after that 50% to TJack, because they were fairly close.
So you want to do 50-50 for health district and TJack?
Actually, it was 50% of the request, Aaron,
Yeah,
and you did
50%
50% of the award.
Yeah.
It's not a big difference. It's not a big difference, but just. Yeah.
Any other options?
It's a reasonable compromise, given that scoring is only one of them. It's our tool, but it's not our Bible.
So going with award 3.
Yeah, I could accept that.
Everyone else?
I think it's a good compromise. So even though I would have wanted more for housing, but thanks, Matt, for getting us to this point in terms of been able to get to a compromise, so I can live with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this puts us in a situation where we're following to, as, I mean, Howard has a good point of like, we have these rules about our scoring, we need those, and I think that kind of finding a way to, this feels like a good middle ground.
Mhm.
Alrighty.
Nancy, are you okay with this?
Helen, Nancy. Okay.
All right, Nancy.
We will fight for housing till the day I die.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so I will say this. And now let me go back and let's do. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to bring up with the task force today? We're on our other business portion of the agenda.
Nope.
Nope. Okay. We will open it up for public comment. If you have something you would like to say, you can raise your hand in the chat function, or you can call in. I'm not seeing any raised hands. All right, cool. So we're gonna roll call real quick to take a vote of the funding request or funding proposal. So just say I approve or I do not approve. And I will share my screen again just to remind everyone. So we're looking at Award 3. So Howard Evergreen.
I approve.
Okay. James Bryant.
I approve.
Kim Spalding. Okay. And then Helen Kimball.
I approve.
And then Matthew Gillikin.
I approve.
And then Nancy Carpenter.
I approve.
All right, cool. Thank you guys. Let me stop sharing. All right, so we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you
everyone.
guys.